Nice mining spot you got here.
Thanks.
Be a shame if something happened to it. Dangerous area, you know. Lots of PKers around.
I'm just trying to gather materials, man.
I know. That's why I'm here. My guild offers protection services. For 100,000 gold per week, we make sure nobody bothers you while you mine.
That's extortion.
Call it what you want. It's insurance. You pay us, you mine safely. You don't pay us, well, we can't guarantee your safety.
And if I refuse?
Then you're not a client. You're content. And we farm content pretty efficiently. Nice haul. Could have kept this if you'd paid the insurance. Think about it for next time. Another one down. That's 15 kills today. Zone is almost clear. The smart ones are already paying.
Good work. Check the north spawns. I want this entire zone under our protection by end of week.
Welcome back to MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask. I'm Boss Mode, and today we're talking about PKing for profit. When player killing stops being random PvP and becomes organized crime. This is murder as a business model. Extortion is gameplay, and the dark economy is built around killing other players. Let's explore when PKing becomes professional. Before we get into the operations, let's talk about how player killing becomes profitable and why some players turn ganking into a full-time job. In most games, killing another player gives you nothing except satisfaction. They drop nothing, or they drop soul-bound items you can't use. Random PKing is pure griefing with no material benefit, but some games have mechanics that make PKing profitable. Full loot games are the big one. In games like EVE Online, Albion Online, or old school RuneScape's Wilderness, when you kill someone, you can loot their inventory, their gear, their resources, their gold. Everything they had becomes yours. This creates a direct financial incentive to kill players who are carrying valuable stuff. Then there's the protection racket model. You control a valuable area, mining zones, farming spots, or even trade routes. You don't necessarily kill everyone. You offer protection for a fee. Pay us, we leave you alone and keep other PKers away. Don't pay, we kill you and take your stuff. It's the mafia model transplanted into MMOs. There's also the bounty hunting economy. Some games have official bounty systems. Players put bounties on enemies and PKers collect by killing the target. This turns PKing into contract work. You're not randomly ganking, you're fulfilling contracts for payment. Mercenary work is another model. Guilds or alliances hire PK groups to harass their enemies, disrupt their operations, or control territory. You're getting paid to kill specific players or groups. It's organized violence as a service. Some PKers make real money. They loot valuable items and sell them for real currency through RMT, the real money trading sites that are out there. Or they offer protection that's paid in cash through PayPal. This crosses from game economics into actual illegal activity in most cases, but it happens. What makes PKing for profit different from regular griefing is the organization and consistency. Random PKers kill for fun and move on. Professional PKers have systems. They scout target, coordinate attacks, maintain control over areas, and collect regular payments. They're running businesses. The profitability depends on game mechanics and player behavior. In games where players regularly carry valuable items into PvP zones, PKing is lucrative. In games where players can easily avoid or escape PKers, it's not worth the effort. Game design determines whether murder can be a sustainable business model. Some games explicitly design for this. EVE's online economy is built around destruction. Ships get destroyed in PvP, creating demand for new ships, which drives the economy. Player killing is intended to be profitable. Other games stumble into it accidentally when players find ways to exploit loot mechanics for profit. EVE Online is famous for mercenary work being legitimate gameplay. There are corporations that exist solely to accept contracts to kill other players or corporations. This is one of them. A mercenary corp called Black Omega ran one of the most successful PK operations in EVE history. They were professional killers. You hired them, you paid them, they hunted your target until the contract was complete or the time ran out. Their prices were based on the target's assets. Once someone's mining operation harassed, 500 million ISK. One a corporation's capital ships destroyed, 5 billion ISK. One an alliance evicted from their territory. The negotiations were based on the scope. Black Omega had scouts in every major region. They had spies in rival corporations. They had multiple fleet commanders and around-the-clock coverage. If they accepted your contract, they delivered. Their success rate was over 90%. But here's where it gets interesting. They also ran a protection racket. Mining corporations in dangerous space could pay Black Omega a monthly fee, and Black Omega would not hunt them. Additionally, Black Omega would protect them from other mercenaries. Some corporations paid for the protection. Others hired different mercs to fight Black Omega. This created a whole mercenary versus mercenary meta. Wars between professional PK corporations, all fighting over who got to control the violence in certain regions. Black Omega operated for years and made trillions of ISK. The leadership behind it became EVE famous. They gave interviews on podcasts, wrote guides on mercenary work, became a part of the game's culture. They turned player killing into a legitimate profession. RuneScape's wilderness is a PvP zone where players can kill each other and loot their items. This created an entire subculture of PK clans who made wilderness control their business. One clan, the Red Skulls, controlled the popular Green Dragon farming area. Green Dragons drop valuable bones and hides. It's a great moneymaker for low-level players, but you have to go into the wilderness to farm them. Red Skulls posted sentries at every Green Dragon spawn. If you wanted to farm dragons, you had two options: join their clan and give them 30% of your drops, or get killed repeatedly until you gave up. Players who joined the protection plan got a clan tag and were left alone by Red Skulls. Players who refused were hunted. Red Skulls had enough members to maintain a 24/7 coverage. The Green Dragon area was completely under their control for over a year. Jagex, the developers, tried to break their monopoly by spawning Green Dragons in other locations. Red Skulls just expanded their operation to cover the new spawns. Eventually, Jagex had to fundamentally redesign the wilderness to reduce the profitability of this kind of control. But during their reign, Red Skulls made billions of GP through protection fees and looting. They turned one area of the game into their personal ATM. Arcade has a pirate system where players can become pirates and attack trade ships. Trade packs are valuable. They take time to make, and selling them gives good gold. But you have to physically transport them across the ocean, and that's where the pirates come in. A pirate guild called Black Tide turned piracy into an industry. They didn't attack random ships hoping to get lucky. They had scouts at every major port. They tracked which traders were carrying packs and where they were heading. They had intel on trade routes and schedules. They operated like modern Somali pirates, fast ships, coordinated attacks, and overwhelming force. They'd intercept trade ships, kill the crew, take the packs, and sell them for profit. They made tens of thousands of gold per week. But they also offered an escort service. Pay them up front, they'd guarantee safe passage. They'd either escort your ship personally or just give you information on safe routes and times. Most traders paid because attempting to run without protection meant almost guaranteed attack by black tide or other pirates. The brilliant part? Black Tide's main revenue wasn't the stolen packs, it was the escort fees. They made more money protecting people from themselves than they did from the actual piracy. They'd created a problem and then sold the solution. Arcage's economy actually depended on black tide. Trade runs were risky, which kept pack prices high, which motivated people to trade runs despite the risk. When Arcage made changes that reduced pirate effectiveness, the trade economy crashed because risk-free trade runs flooded the market. Black Tide was so successful that other pirate guilds tried to compete. This led to pirate wars, pirates fighting pirates over who got control of the extortion. The ocean became a battleground between criminal organizations, all fighting over trade route control. Albion Online is a full loot PvP game. When you die, you drop everything. This makes every trip into PvP zones risky. One group, the Gank Squad, turned dungeon entrances into kill zones. Albion has dungeons in black zones, PvP areas, that drop valuable loot. Players gear up, go into black zones, clear dungeons, come out with loot. Gank Squad waited at dungeon exits. They had scouts watching for players entering the dungeons. They'd track what gear players were wearing going in. If someone went in with high value gear, well, the Gank Squad would position themselves at the exit. When the player came out, full inventory of loot, tired from the dungeon, Gank Squad would attack. The player had no chance. They were outnumbered, tired, caught off guard. Gank Squad would kill them, take their dungeon loot plus their gear, and make massive profits. They killed dozens of players per day. But Gank Squad also offered a service. For a flat fee paid up front, they'd leave you alone for the day. They maintained a list of paid players and wouldn't attack them. This worked because Gank Squad had such good coverage that paying the fee was cheaper than risking death. Some players refused to pay on principle. Gank Squad made examples of them. They'd camp that player specifically, killing them every time they tried to dungeon. Eventually, most players either paid, stopped dungeoning in black zones, or joined bigger groups for protection. Gank Squad operated for months until the game's population in these zones dropped so much that there weren't enough victims to sustain the operation. They'd essentially hunted the area to extinction. Lineage 2 has a spoil system where certain classes can spoil monsters before killing them to get extra loot. This is profitable but time-consuming. One group automated it with bots and protected the bot farms from PK guilds. They had dozens of bot accounts farming specific spots 24/7. The bots spoiled and killed mobs, accumulating valuable materials. But botting is against the rules, so other players would try to disrupt or report the bots. The bot operators formed a PK guild specifically to protect their bots. If you went near their farming areas, you'd be warned once. If you persisted, you'd be killed. If you kept coming back, they'd camp you until you gave up. This PK guild wasn't killing for sport, they were protecting a business investment. The bots generated real income through RMT. Killing players was just overhead cost for protecting the operation. Eventually, the server's GM banned waves of bots. By then, the operators had made thousands of real dollars. They'd used PKing to protect an illegal botting operation that generated actual money. This one is old school. In Ultima Online, player houses could be broken into if the owner wasn't careful. A group of PKers specialized in house robbery. They would scout for houses with valuable items that were visible. They'd wait for the owner to be away. They'd use game mechanics to access the house, stealing everything, and if the owner logged in during the theft, they'd kill them. But they also ran a security service for a monthly fee. They'd check your house security and make sure it was thief-proof. They'd teach you how to secure containers and use game housing mechanics correctly. The scam was that they were both the thieves and the security consultants. If you didn't pay for their service, you'd probably get robbed by them or their associates. If you did pay, they'd legitimately protect your house because you were now a client. This created a bizarre situation where the same people were robbing non-clients and protecting clients, and the protection service actually worked because they knew exactly how the robberies were done. This operation ran for years until UO changed housing mechanics to reduce the theft opportunities. But for a time, these PKers ran a legitimate protection racket around virtual real estate. So where's the line between legitimate gameplay and harassment? When does profitable PKing cross from intended game design into toxic behavior? This is complicated because different games have different philosophies. EVE Online explicitly allows and encourages mercenary work. It's part of the intended gameplay. Hiring someone to kill your enemies is a valid strategy. The developers designed the game with this in mind. But even in EVE, there are lines. If you're camping someone 24/7 so they literally can't play, that's harassment. If you're targeting someone because of their real-life identity or characteristics, that's discrimination. The game allows PKing, but not targeted harassment. In full loot games like Albion or RuneScape, the risk of losing items is part of the design. Players accept that going into PvP zones means they might get killed and looted. That's the trade-off for better rewards. If you don't want that risk, you stay in safe zones. But there's a difference between occasional ganking and organized operations that make entire zones uninhabitable. When a PK guild controls an area so completely that normal players can't use it, is that emergent gameplay or broken design? The protection racket is especially murky. On one hand, it's creative gameplay. Players created an economic system around violence and protection. That's emergent gameplay at its finest. On the other hand, it's literally extortion. You're forcing people to pay you under threat of violence. Some argue that if the game allows it mechanically, it's fair game. The developers put PvP in the game, put valuable resources in PvP zones, and made deaths consequential. Players who don't like it should play different content or different games. Others argue that just because something is mechanically possible doesn't make it good for the game. If profitable PKing drives away casual players, reduces the population, or makes the game less fun for everyone except for the PK guilds, It's bad design, even if it's allowed. There's also the question of real money involvement. When PKing becomes profitable enough that players are making real money through RMT, it crosses a line. Now, you're not just playing the game for fun or in-game wealth. You're running a business that depends on making other players' experiences worse. The fact that PKers can make hundreds or thousands of real dollars by systematically killing other players creates perverse incentives. They have financial motivation to be as aggressive or disruptive as possible. That's not healthy for any game community. So, how do developers deal with PKing for profit when it becomes a problem? Let's look at the approaches different games have taken. The first approach is to embrace it. EVE Online basically said, "This is a part of our game." They designed the economy around destruction. They created systems specifically for mercenary contracts. They accepted that some players will make careers out of killing others. This works for EVE because the entire game is built around player conflict. The second approach is to nerf profitability. If PKing is too profitable, make it less so. Reduce the value of drops in PvP zones. Make it harder to transport stolen goods. Increase the penalties for killing players. Arcade did this when piracy got out of control. They reduced trade pack values and made pirate penalties harsher. The third approach is to create counterplay options. Give victims a way to defend themselves or get revenge. Add bounty systems where PKers can be hunted. Create anti-PK guilds that protect regular players. Give players tools to fight back against organized PKing. The fourth approach is to restrict where PKing can happen. Many games added safe zones or reduced the areas where PvP is allowed. RuneScape dramatically shrunk the wilderness at one point. This protects casual players but reduces the PvP content that hardcore players wanted. The fifth approach is to punish repeat offenders. If someone is killing way more players than average, flag them as a griefer and impose penalties. Lineage 2 had karma systems where killing too many players made you vulnerable to other players. This doesn't stop organized PKing, but makes it riskier. The sixth approach is to remove full loot mechanics. World of Warcraft never had full loot on death. You can't build a protection racket if killing people doesn't let you take their stuff. This solves the profit motive, but removes the risk or the reward tension that some players love. The problem is that every solution creates new issues. Make PKing unprofitable and hardcore PvP players complain that there's no point to PvP. Remove PvP zones and you've eliminated a major part of the game. Add counterplay and PK guilds just adapt their tactics. The fundamental tension is between players who want consequence-free PvE gameplay and players who want meaningful PvP with real stakes. Profitable PKing sits at the intersection of that tension. Developers are trying to satisfy both groups and usually end up satisfying neither. Let's talk about what it's like to be on the receiving end of organized PKing, because these operations don't just affect game balance, they affect real people's experiences. Imagine you're a solo player, you found a good farming spot, you're making decent gold, then a PK guild discovers the area. Suddenly, every time you go there, you're killed. Your choices are pay protection money, find a worse spot, or quit the content entirely. If you pay, you're rewarding bad behavior. You're funding an extortion operation. But if you don't pay, you don't get to play the content you enjoy. You're effectively locked out of part of the game unless you submit to the PK Guild's demands. For new players, this is devastating. You're still learning the game, you don't have the gold to pay protection fees, and you're getting killed by max level players before you understand what's happening. This creates terrible new player experiences that hurt the game's populations. For casual players, profitable PKing removes content from the game. If all the good farming spots are controlled by PK guilds demanding payment, you can't access that content without joining the PvP meta. The game effectively forces you to engage with PvP even though you don't want to. There's also the frustration of feeling like you can't win. If you fight back, you lose because the PK guild has more people and better guild. If you pay, you lose because you're being extorted. If you leave the area, you lose because you can't do the content you wanted. Every option is losing. And there's the psychological aspect. When you log in to play a game for fun and instead spend your session getting killed repeatedly by organized groups demanding payment, it stops being fun. It becomes work. You're not playing a game anymore. You're dealing with virtual criminals. For some players, organized PKing is the reason they quit. It's not fun getting repeatedly killed by professionals who are treating murder as a job. It's not fun being extorted for protection money. It's not fun having entire zones rendered unusable by PK monopolies. The PKers might argue it's a part of the game, or go play on a PvE server. But that doesn't change the fact that their profitable business model is built on making other players miserable. PKing for profit is one of those gray areas where legitimate gameplay and toxic behavior overlap. It's emergent gameplay built on making other players worse off. It's creative economics applied to murder. If you're in a PK guild running a protection racket or mercenary operation, understand that your profit comes from other players' frustration. You're not just playing the game, you're building a business model around making people pay you to stop hurting them. That's textbook extortion. But also, if the game allows it and even encourages it, can we really blame other players for doing it? The developers created the mechanics to make that possible. Maybe the problem isn't the players, it's the design. The truth is that meaningful PvP requires stakes, but too much consequences drive people away. Profitable PKing is what happens when the balance tips too far towards consequence. It's the extreme end of full loot PvP design. Some games make it work. EVE Online has thrived for 20 years with the mercenaries and profitable PKing as core features. Other games have died because PK guilds drove the population away. The difference is usually in how much agency victims have and whether there's content outside the PK zones. Next week on MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask, we're diving into auction house manipulation, the silent trolls. We're talking about the players who crashed markets, cornered commodities, and turned the economy into their personal playground without killing anyone. You definitely don't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and support the podcast. Tell your guildmates and share it on your Discord, and leave us a review. And if you've got a story about organized PKing as a victim, perpetrator, or observer, email us at podcast@mmomadness.com. Until then, watch your back in PvP zones, consider whether protection money is worth it, and remember, not all business models are ethical, even in video games. I'm Boss Mode, and thanks for listening.